My family abandoned me because my sister blamed me for her divorce. I ruined her life years later with an email that revealed everything. Almost 7 years ago, my family removed me from their lives and kicked me out of the house. I, 29M, was 22 at the time and lacked the financial stability to rent an apartment on my own. What had transpired was so unexpected that I had no time to prepare, either psychologically or financially. My sister was the cause of all of this. My sister, Hannah, 37F, and I have never been close due to our huge age difference. She married her partner of 3 years, Pete, 39M, when she was 27, and they were married for 3 years. They divorced after 3 years of marriage because Hannah suspected Pete of having an affair with one of my friends. I had been living with my parents after college because I had recently begun working and wanted to save money before moving out. My parents were fine with the arrangement as well until my sister announced her divorce. She returned home one day, crying uncontrollably, and stated that she had filed for divorce because her husband had been cheating on her for 6 months. Then she threw me under the bus for introducing my friend to him. My friend Emily, 28F, was attempting to gain weight, and Pete, who was a licensed dietitian, volunteered to help her. I had introduced her to him, and it turned out she was the one Pete had been cheating on my sister with. I was startled that this was occurring because, while Emily and I were not particularly close, I thought she was a decent lady who would never become involved with a married man. Furthermore, dishonesty was out of character for Pete as well. He was completely charmed with Hannah and only had positive things to say about her, so I found it quite difficult to think he cheated on her. I had serious reservations, but my parents immediately trusted her and did not question anything, despite the fact that she had no evidence of him cheating. They simply accepted her word for it. I'm not going to hold it against them, since they would prefer their own daughter over their son-in-law, regardless of who was correct. What I didn't understand was why they so quickly kicked me out simply because Hannah said so. She stormed in one day, had a tantrum, and persuaded my parents to kick me out merely because I had introduced Emily to Pete. She blamed me for destroying her marriage, and my parents agreed for some reason. I was upset and tried to stop my parents, but they refused to listen. They warned me that if I didn't leave, they would kick me out. In only one day, I had lost both my family and my home and had no idea where to go. I was sobbing on the pavement with all my belongings for about an hour before I was able to gather myself and go to a friend's house for the night. I tried phoning them every day for the next 2 days, but had no success. My friend was gracious enough to let me stay at his house until I could find an apartment for myself. Unfortunately, my parents were convinced that I was in the wrong and was to blame for the divorce. My parents had actually told me that they were disgusted by what I'd done before kicking me out, which made no sense given I wasn't the one Pete cheated on. They had blocked my number, so I couldn't reach them at all. When I attempted to visit them, my mother threatened to call the cops if I did not leave. After that, I concluded they were serious and blamed me for whatever had transpired. I don't suppose I had any reason to be surprised, given that my sister was always the favorite child. My parents had never intended for a second child, so I was constantly sidelined. While I didn't care for it growing up, I had no idea it would lead to something so significant. Thinking about it now, I suppose I should have seen it coming, but honestly, I don't think anyone in my position could have anticipated something like this. Anyway, for the following few weeks, I tried to figure things out on my own. Since Hannah and my parents had effectively cut me off, and I had no way to contact them, I couldn't chat with Pete since he had also blocked me, which made no sense to me. I couldn't find him either because Hannah and Pete had moved out of the house they shared and gone to live with their separate parents. So with no way to contact anyone involved, I turned to Emily, my last choice for finding out the truth. As I previously stated, Emily and I were not very close, but I had to do what was necessary. I asked to meet with her one day and explain the problem. I questioned her if Hannah's claims about the affair were accurate, and she flatly denied it. To be really honest, I believed her. Emily told me that she'd only seen Pete a few times, and just professionally, so there was nothing going on between them. She had no understanding of why Hannah would say such nasty things about her. She even told me she'd had a stable partner for a couple of years, and was planning to marry in a few months. She even showed me photos. What Emily told me was far more believable than anything Hannah stated. I had no proof, but I knew Hannah was lying about the real cause for the divorce. However, because I lacked proof, I was unable to return to my family, and I could not have returned without it. Back then, I was yearning to return to my family because I missed them so much, despite all they had done to me. With time, I was able to overcome it and move on with my life. I found a place and made my employment the focus of my life so that I could distract myself. I also needed to pay the bills, so it was a better way to cope than sitting around feeling unhappy. I was hurting a lot because I didn't have any other options, but I knew I had to keep on with or without the support of my family. Years have passed, and I am doing a lot better in life. I relocated from my small apartment to a much larger one, and I even proposed to my girlfriend of 2 years about a week ago. Our engagement post proved to be a game changer for me. Just a few days after that post, I received an email out of nowhere that not only revealed the full tale of Hannah's divorce, but also provided all of the answers I needed, along with documentation. My fiancée, Liza, 30F, normally just posted about us on Instagram, but the photo from our engagement ended up on her Facebook feed, where she had a larger audience. It was a public post, so a lot of people saw it, including my ex-brother-in-law, Peter. He happened to be someone my fiancée met at a conference a few years ago, since she was a doctor, and she ended up joining him on Facebook, where he found me. It truly is a tiny world, and for the first time, I felt pleased with it. Pete contacted me a few days after we posted, but instead of texting me on social media, he chose to send an anonymous email. He subsequently claimed that he did this so he wouldn't feel strange about what he was doing, as it had been several years since his divorce. And he didn't want to appear like a disgruntled loser who hadn't moved on from what happened. Besides, he was the one who blocked me in the first place. So he felt strange and guilty about getting back in touch with me about something that happened so many years ago. The email contained the entire tale and documentation of what happened 7 years ago. When I finished reading it, I couldn't believe my eyes. Apparently, my sister was the one cheating on Pete, not the other way around, as she had been telling us for so long. Not only was that a massive lie, but she had been cheating on Pete with a friend of mine, just as she had accused him of. My friend Frank, 28M, worked as a clerk at a grocery store near Hannah's house back then. I would never have noticed the connection myself because I had never seen them together. I suppose they had kept it sufficiently under wraps, but not enough for Pete to find out. When questioned, Hannah told Pete that it was all my fault because I had introduced her to Frank and even told her how much he needed her help because he was an aspiring singer. And she was a really excellent singer herself. She agreed to help him, and they were in love before they realized it. She even admitted that I was involved and had helped them keep things quiet for so long. All of this was obviously a fabrication, and I had no idea Frank and Hannah were up to anything. Pete was enraged when he found out and blocked my entire family, which he now admits was idiotic of him. However, he was so enraged that he didn't think much about his conduct. Of course, he told me all of this in person, because the email was designed to be as impersonal as possible. He did not want it traced back to him, but I figured it out. He had provided copies of emails between my sister and Frank, in which they discussed how easy it was to dupe Pete. The emails were filled with declarations of love and plans for where they would meet next. Hannah couldn't refute any of this because she signed off on the emails with her middle name, which few people were aware of. I had her dead to rights. After combing through Liza's Facebook friends, I concluded that Pete must have sent me the email. My gut intuition told me that it had to do with social networking. When I eventually discovered Pete on her friend list, I contacted him. We planned to meet a few days ago, and he informed me that he learned about what Hannah had told her family from Emily, who had met him a few years before. I had told Emily to keep my side of the story a secret, and I was cursing myself when I realized that if I hadn't said that, she would have informed Pete about it, and I would have been able to prove my innocence a long time ago. Anyway, Emily and Pete ran into one another a few years ago, and she ended up questioning him about their divorce. They started conversing, and he eventually learned what Hannah had told us. He said that he wanted to speak with me about it and tell me the truth, but he didn't because he felt strange. I swear, if Pete hadn't been so easily embarrassed, my life would have been much easier. I did forgive him, though, since I needed his cooperation to completely destroy my sister, and I knew he would agree. Hannah had clearly been lying to my parents in order to secure financial assistance during her divorce, and she had even thrown me under the bus for good measure, knowing that one discussion with Emily would disclose the truth. I couldn't believe someone, particularly someone related to me by blood, could be so selfish. I'm sure Hannah never bothered to correct the record, and my parents had simply accepted whatever lies she'd been giving them during her divorce. She knew that if the truth about her being the cheater was out, she would be in serious danger, and she simply couldn't risk it. That's too bad. The truth had finally come out, and I was going to use it to ruin her life, just as she had ruined mine all those years before. I had not seen my family in 7 years, so I wasn't sure if they still lived in the same house. But they hadn't moved. I checked this with an old neighbor before arriving, and I was relieved to discover that Hannah was still living with them as well. That didn't surprise me because Hannah had always been a couch slug who loathed doing her own job. If she could live with our old parents and have them perform all of her duties, she would. Anyway, 2 days ago, Pete and I unexpectedly arrived at their place. My mother answered the door, and we hardly gave her time to process what was occurring before we walked in. My father and Hannah were also present in the living room. We were back together as one happy family, but only for a short time. Their faces turned nasty as soon as we entered. My father instantly threatened us, saying he'd call the cops if we didn't leave, but I shot back, telling him he could do whatever he wanted once he saw the documents we were about to show them. My parents looked perplexed, but Hannah looked like she was about to vomit and excused herself, heading to her room. I assumed she was trying to flee, but there was no use in doing so. Pete then proceeded to show my parents the divorce papers and screenshots of Hannah and Frank's correspondence, while I described the true story. Pete also told my parents that Hannah had to give up our family heirloom, my grandmother's diamond ring, in the settlement. She had to sell the ring because she couldn't afford to pay him the money. She is a high school teacher. My parents were already terrified by what we had told them, and this was simply the cherry on top. We watched the drama unfold as my father demanded an explanation from Hannah for all that had occurred. Despite all of the evidence against her, she continued to lie and cover up the truth. So my father kicked her out. He packed her belongings for her, handed her the bags, and then told us all to leave their house. I didn't need to be told twice before leaving with Pete. As my sister cried and pleaded with my parents to let her back in, just like I did all those years ago, this was excellent karma, and I could not be happier. It's been a few days since then, and my sister just arrived at my house a few hours ago, insisting that I immediately make amends with my parents. I had no idea how she located me, but I informed her that I no longer owed her anything. She had ruined my life once, so I returned the favor, and we were now equal. I swear she had no pride left because the moment I said that, she burst into tears and accused me of being a monster. I didn't care about her drama and closed the door. As she began to sob uncontrollably, I just put on my headphones and listened to music as Liza, my fiancée, worked in her study so that neither of us would be disturbed. Hannah eventually departed, but not before leaving a message with a marker on my door, reminding me that I was nothing more than a vengeful monster. To be honest, I see nothing wrong with what I did and have no regrets. But Hannah appears to believe that I am the villain here. I just did to her what she had done to me some years ago, only I told the truth, whereas she did nothing but lie and threw me under the bus. So what do you all think? Am I the *** hole who ruined my sister's life and got her kicked out 7 years after she accused me of causing her divorce? Update 1. Hannah is still troubling me, despite the fact that she was kicked out a week ago. I had to threaten her with calling the cops after she called me for the 14th time today before she stopped. I'm not sure how she found my phone number and address, but that's not what I'm interested in right now. Hannah is attempting to get sympathy from me since apparently a school teacher's salary is insufficient for her to support herself, but I don't think that's the case. She's just furious that she has to seek a home and pay her own rent, energy, and groceries now that our parents have booted her out. I don't feel really sad for her, in case you were asking. Yeah, I did block her phone multiple times, but I think she's having her pals add me to conference calls, so it's pointless. My parents are as awful, if not worse, than Hannah. They found me on Facebook and saw the post announcing my engagement, so they want to be a part of my life again and have expressed a wish to attend my wedding. They have not apologized yet, but for some reason, they expect me to simply invite them to my wedding, which is meant to be a very special day for me. I don't know where these individuals get the courage to say things like this, but I'm not reacting to any of it. Liza and I have had a blast reading their texts because there's no chance they're genuine. Right now, it's all just very sad for them. Update 2. Hannah showed up at my house again after I threatened to report her for harassment yesterday. I was about to go for work, but she stopped me by flinging herself across the hood of my car and refusing to move until I spoke with her. It was really frustrating, so I ended up contacting the cops this time. They carried her away while she yelled and wept, attempting to paint me as the evil guy, but nobody believed her sad girl play. It took some time to file charges against her, but once I did, I left for work since I didn't want to let this minor incident spoil my day. I was confident that my parents would bail her out because she was their favorite, and I was proven correct. After getting her out, my parents texted me a lengthy message about how I was being far too harsh on them for an honest mistake they made nearly 10 years ago. It was comical since nothing about what my sister and dad subjected me to was either honest or incorrect. They knew exactly what they were doing and were fully aware of how nasty they were. Despite the fact that I had nowhere else to go, they nonetheless sent me out on the street. So now that I can do the same to them, I see no reason to be forgiving or compassionate. I texted my parents back, telling them that they had lost the right to tell me what I could and couldn't do years ago, so they should stop fooling themselves. I have not blocked them yet because I haven't had time to check my messages, but I will shortly. Hopefully, I'll be free of this entire family for good. Update 3. I just got home from work and checked my social media, only to discover that my folks had sent me yet another lengthy message. Liza and I went through it together. and I swear it was the funniest thing I had ever read. I suppose the poor people are unaware that nothing they say or do today will cause me any harm. I am just giggling at how delusional and sad they are. Apparently, they still consider us to be family, and they have taken Hannah back in. They've decided that both of their children need a second chance, as if I've ever done anything wrong. So while they have welcomed my sister back in, they also expect me and Liza to come to their house shortly for dinner, so that we may parents force me to cancel my engagement party for my golden child brother's graduation. Now they're mad because relatives chose my party. I, 28M, have a younger brother, Leon, 26M, who recently graduated from community college. I might add, about the same time. I became involved with Nina, 28F, my high school love. We have been together for 10 years, and it was about time that we made this official. 2 weeks ago, I proposed to her and decided to invite a party to our house honoring our engagement. Last weekend, 5 days after the invites were distributed, the party was hosted. The drama surrounding all of this has been so bizarre and chaotic that I have no idea how to make sense of it. It all began when I invited my close family, my parents and brother, who contacted me and demanded that I postpone this celebration. For the life of me, I couldn't understand why they would ask me to do such a thing, when I told them I wasn't going to. They informed me they had decided to throw my brother a celebration for his graduation. Naturally, it also occurred to be the day of my engagement party. Although they hadn't yet sent the invites the same evening I sent mine, they were intending to do so. Now they said at least one of us had to back off and allow the other to honor their significant event. We share a family, hence 2 festivities on the same day would cause a lot of strife. And we wanted nothing like that. The cards are out on the table. My family is not especially close. I get along with the rest of my family, but not with my parents or Leon. This is why they were not aware of the fact that I was organizing an engagement party on the same day they were scheduled to be celebrating a graduation. On rare occasions, like when we congratulated one another upon learning of his graduation, and when they learned of my engagement, we do communicate. On birthdays and holidays, we wish each other well. But that is about it. It was therefore quite clear in my mind what I intended to do when they asked me to call off my engagement celebration for their day, and I said no right away. Though I mean not to discredit Leon, I believe his graduating from community college at 26 is not as significant as my engagement to Nina, the love of my life with whom I have been with for the past 10 years. To be honest, right now, I hardly give a damn about if I'm undercutting him. I had already sent out the invitations, so I made it quite plain to my parents that I was not going to postpone my event. Since they hadn't yet sent out their invites, they might postpone their thing if they so wanted. Though my parents were not delighted about it, and neither was Leon, I thought it was a really decent proposition, given my brother has always been the golden child. It was not unexpected they were behaving this way. Every small deed he accomplished growing up had to be honored. For example, I recall having this first-time emotion when I was just 7 years old. As I knew that on my 5th birthday, the celebration had been somewhat quiet. It had simply been my parents, a couple of their acquaintances, and a few of my neighborhood friends. As my parents felt, I wouldn't even remember the party when I grew up. On the other hand, when my brother was 5, they went all out and actually leased a space so they could throw him a themed party. All I got when I graduated middle school was a congratulation and a pat on the back. Leon had still another celebration after he finished middle school. It was the same when I started college, graduated from high school, and later on from college. I received no more than a few words of encouragement. I had sort of figured out, after middle school, that they preferred Leon far more than they did me. I thus started separating myself from them as soon as I graduated from high school and went out for college. Since they were still paying for my education bills, I did not cut them off entirely. But I sort of stopped talking to them as soon as I started a job. Every time I saw them, I was polite to them, but I neglected to maintain in touch, and they neither expected me to. Neither of us objected to the circumstances. We had adjusted as we felt was suitable. Leon and I never got along either. We used to argue or dig at each other all the time growing up. And by the time we were in high school, we had concluded that we would be better off not talking. To be honest, he is rather different from me, and not in the nice sort of difference. My parents treated him right from his early years, which has made him spoiled, entitled, and very bratty. Everyone who knows our family would agree. I believe that he is not exactly the easiest person to be around. Though he was really the troublemaker in high school and nearly got expelled several times. My parents never appeared to have an issue with whatever he did. When he told them he wanted to join a firm a few of his buddies had founded with a revolutionary idea, graphic printed t-shirts for kids and teens, they said nothing at all. That's exciting. Basically, it did not go well. After it failed, and he ended up squandering our parents' investment money, which he also received a free pass for, he decided he wanted to go to college. He had to stick to community college and earn a degree in business, as his grades were insufficient for it, and he had taken rather a few gap years. Now my parents asked me to call off my engagement party so they could celebrate his graduation. Anybody in my place would have done the same. Hence, there was nothing callous about what I was doing. My parents started acting on the phone as if I was the worst person on the planet for not postponing my party. They claimed that although they had always known I was against my brother, this was simply too much. Though I wanted no drama before my engagement party, I tried to reason with them. Unfortunately, there was simply no conversation with them. I became annoyed at last and told them they were free to have their party on the same day as mine, but I was not adjusting anything to fit Leon or her. I hung up and then blocked them. Leon neither bothered to get in touch with me nor gave me an opportunity to discuss any of this. In any case, I did not hear from them for the next 4 days following our dispute, but from many of my relatives. I also learned that they had also gotten invited to Leon's graduation celebration, which fell on the same day my engagement party was taking place. They lacked direction on what to do. I refrained from saying anything for the first 2 days, since I truly wanted to keep anyone from entering the conflict between my family and me. I respected that they chose this. It was their decision. I wouldn't worry if my family attended any gathering they desired. They were free to. Deep down, I would obviously be rather offended if a few people turned up for my party. But I couldn't make them do anything. 3 days ago, though, I discovered that my parents were following the exact reverse strategy. My cousin informed me that, since I have been nothing but terrible to them, my parents reportedly had been advising everyone not to attend my engagement party. Apparently, they had accused me of hosting my engagement party on the same day they had decided to host my brother's graduation party for deliberate intent. After they told me about it, I chose to send invites on the same day for my party and totally stunned them, even though they claimed they had been talking about this idea for a few weeks. I figured I could play this game if they were going to badmouth me, since they were trying so very hard. Luckily, I didn't have to fabricate such falsehoods to make them look awful. I basically told everyone the truth, saying that I knew my parents had most likely been trying to badmouth me and offering folks a very distorted view of things. I messaged everyone invited to the party on the phone call the other day. I, therefore, recounted what we had discussed and informed them of my version of events, that which was the truth. I also mentioned that from my early years, I had to cope with the reality that Leon always got celebrated regardless of his actions, and that I had been cool with it thus far. But now it was unfair of my parents to expect me to postpone the celebration of my own accomplishments only to suit them and their golden kid. Now, if any of my family still chose to believe them over me, they were free to do so, but I would truly appreciate it if they did not bother to maintain in touch with me. After that, it was a quite direct and to-the-point argument, though most of my family merely texted me back to let me know they could understand where I was coming from and that they were on my side. I was somewhat worried about what the reaction to that would be. They had seen personally the kind of treatment I had gotten from my parents straight from my early years. Like a few of my cousins and some of my uncles and aunts who were on the younger side. My family members, who belonged to the same generation as I, were informed that they would be attending my celebration. Since most of them had RSVP'd yes, nah, and I were really content. Last night, we had an absolutely great time at the party. Surprisingly, almost everyone who had been invited turned up there, and I don't even believe it presented a problem for any of them. People informed me they sensed something was wrong about what my parents were saying when they started getting messages from them, and refused to believe I would do something as underhanded as what they accused me of. I was glad people understood that I was not the type of person who purposefully organized a party on the same day as my brother simply to take center stage. Furthermore, many people told me they were happy I was not caving into my parents' expectations, as I was right about how unfairly I had been treated all my life. Therefore, not only did I get to celebrate my engagement with my friends and relatives, but I also discovered that, with regard to my parents and brother, most of my family members shared my views. The celebration was generally rather successful, and until this morning, I was quite content. My parents and Leon visited me right away when I woke up, the last people I wanted to see. I told them to go away, and honestly had no intention of allowing them in. When they started ringing the doorbell, my dad countered that they would not be leaving anywhere until they had a conversation with me, and that they were here to talk to me. I wanted to contact the cops, but Na persuaded me to just talk to them once and wrap things up once and for all. I thus decided to let them in, and my folks started throwing charges at me as soon as they did. Since I had only woken up a few minutes earlier, I was somewhat surprised and somewhat confused. Yet I had chosen to act, since they were accusing me of being rather jealous of Leon. They revealed that hardly anyone had come up for their party. Even those who had shown up left within a few minutes after some polite small talk to be able to make it to my party. They claimed to have heard the message I had conveyed to our cousins. I said that although at first I did not want to do something like that. They had pushed my hand by trying to badmouth me and lie about me. Still, given their loud charges, it felt as though my remarks were not even audible. They thought I was doing all of this only to constantly monopolize the attention and out of jealousy of Leon. They said I was separating the family. I suppose Na came to see after some time that she had no use in trying to hold a conversation with them, as they were obviously not polite enough for that. She stepped in and stated she would phone the police should they not leave. Very quickly, they left then, but they were still calling me a lot of nasty names. The window shook for a good few seconds when Leon even slammed the door of our house, so forcefully as he closed it. Though I chose to let it go, I half-mindedly called him back to let him have it. Like Na, I was fairly irate. We had blocked all of them. Hence, an hour after they left, we got a message from an unidentified number, probably a friend or someone else's number they were using. The message indicated that, despite all we said and did, we were still family, and that they were rather let down that I had decided to have my engagement party on the same day as Leon's celebration, as this was the one thing I could have let him have. They claimed they were merely attempting to provide a good picture of him, even if he was ashamed of the fact that he was already 26 years old upon graduating from college. Besides that, his company had recently failed a few years ago, so he had little reason to rejoice. And they were merely attempting to make him happy. I never even considered it in such terms, though. They thus claimed to be rather let down and expected me to be more mature about this. They also apologized for trying to discredit me, but they claimed they had no other option. As they truly wanted this celebration to go off without a hitch, I have been truly perplexed ever since I got that letter. Though I understand this is classic manipulation on one hand. What if they are truly sorry? We are here asking, am I the AITA for having my engagement party on the same day as my brother's graduation party? Na is very torn as well. Some of you seem to have a problem with the fact that my relatives did not step up for me and try to do something when they had always known that my parents did not treat my brother and me equally. In their defense, I would just like to say that they did all they could. They always tried to be there for me and were always nice and kind to me. I'm pretty sure that a few of them even tried to speak to my parents to make them realize that the way they were treating me and Leon so differently was not fair to either of us. But my parents did not care, and honestly, what more could they have done? It's not like it was a crime bad enough to warrant demanding custody of me. That would have just been absurd. And I don't think anybody wanted to do that either, since they also have their lives and families to think about. Besides, I was doing just fine. I generally stopped having expectations from my parents after a certain point, so I do not mind that they put my brother up on a pedestal and did not seem to care much about me. As long as everything was paid for, I didn't care. I'm on good terms with the rest of my family, and I don't mind the fact that most of them are on good terms with my parents and my brother as well. I haven't made them choose. I had just said that if they chose not to attend my party, then we would have had a problem. But honestly, all of them did attend. And I don't mind anymore if they continue to be on good terms with my parents and Leon. I made that very clear at the party as well. Anyway, most of you were questioning why I even bothered to keep in touch with the rest of my family, and yeah, this is why. I just don't think that it's that deep. This is between my parents, my brother, and me, not them. I don't want to drag them into this for no reason. Update 1. After reading most of the responses on my initial post, I concluded that I had nothing to regret. A few days later, after emailing them that I did not feel like talking to them anymore and would really appreciate it if they remained away from me from now on, I kept my parents and Leon blocked, as well as the number they had contacted me from earlier. I have not heard from them for the past 3 days, and none of my relatives had anything to say either. Still, today was really different. My mother visited us just before Na and I were ready to head off for work. This was only her. My dad and Leon were not with her. She is generally much more subdued than they are. I chose to invite her in since I felt that we might at last have a civilized conversation like grown-up adults rather than engage in a yelling fight. She told me once she was inside that she was here to chat with both of us. Hence, Na had to join the discussion as well. We sat there, and then she began by stating she truly regretted whatever occurred lately and wanted to apologize on behalf of all 3 of them. To be honest, I don't really count that as an apology, since had all 3 of them wanted to apologize, they ought to have turned up together and done so. It is not enough just to send my mother apologizing notes. Still, I said nothing about it. Then, my mother continued saying she was still really offended over one item that had happened on their most recent visit, even though she realized they had screwed up. She stated she valued our 10-year relationship and thought Na was like her own daughter. But on their last visit, Na had threatened to call the cops on my father. Now she thought they deserved an apology for that, since no matter what, this was between family, and Na wasn't family yet. Na had been shouting in my dad's face, threatening to call the police, and had even told him he had to leave our house right then. That had been rather rude. Now, since they were willing to atone for what they had done, she expected the two of us to also apologize, since we had also treated them disrespectfully, Na for yelling at my parents, and me for letting it go and passively observing while my fiancé yelled at my parents. For a moment, neither of us knew what to say. Then, I became rather agitated by what was being said. So I informed my mother that although I valued her gesture of showing up and apologizing on behalf of my family, it was entirely pointless, since it was just my mom. I had genuinely thought that she would at least make sense and try to right things. They still couldn't let go of their great ego, though. She had just wasted half an hour of our time. And I informed her straightforwardly that we did not need a moral lecture from her, since Na had arrived at our house uninvited. I told her she was exactly within her rights to shout at whoever she chose. We had opened the door because we honestly thought we could have a conversation with them and clear the air. But they had shown us wrong by acting like lunatics and yelling in our faces as soon as the door was open to them. More crucially, it made little difference to me whether or not they regarded Na as family. To be honest, she was my family, even more so than they were. Therefore, neither of us owed them any apologies. And right now, I wouldn't want one from them either. Now that she had said whatever she came to say, and we had listened to her out, I informed my mother we were done, and she had to leave. She refused to get up, though, and declared she would not tolerate this kind of behavior from me, since I was not even interested in communicating with my family anymore. It really started to get a little annoying. I ended up telling my mother that I really did not care what type of behavior she would take from me. I had separated myself from them anyhow once I graduated from college, and now, following all that had transpired, I just wanted never to talk to them ever again. I wanted her out of my life, hence, I was fine with it if she disliked this kind of behavior. She did not have to put up with me. The same went for my dad and brother. After a little argument, she informed me that they were leaving now, since I had made it quite plain that I did not want them in my life, and she was going to make sure I never got to see them ever once again. I assured her I was good with it, and she departed. At last, we arrived late for work by a lot, but at least this interaction will help to bring an end to all of this, since, to be honest, I'm sick of my family. Every time any of them show up at my house, I just call the cops. That's it. Update 2. Hey, 3 weeks have passed since my last report. Na and I had quite anticipated this entire thing to have blown over by now, but last night my folks decided to pay Na's parents a visit. As I mentioned, we have been together for 10 years. So even our families know each other really well, and Nina's parents reside a few blocks from mine. They thus showed up at their house around 10:00 in the night to discuss our children and their terrible behavior. Nina's parents first didn't know what to do, since they heard about our recent arguments. But they let them in finally, since they wanted to be polite. Nevertheless, they began moaning about how they didn't even know where they had gone wrong with parenting me, and were so unhappy that I had turned out this way. Whereas Leon was the model of what a wonderful kid should be. Right away, they began discussing how he was still living with them, since he did not want to forsake them in their old age. Yes, as if that were the real reason, and not because he lacked the means to live by himself. Neither do my parents ask him to pay for any other bills or expenses. They let him live rent-free. Still, they continued for a few minutes, endlessly praising Leon and disparaging me as nothing but a disappointment. By then, Nina's parents knew they were most likely a bit drunk. Then, They began discussing Na in the manner she had allegedly offended them the last time they had seen her. She had always been a shy and quiet child, thus they were rather surprised. Since they informed her parents they did not mean to be nasty, but they had never expected Na to behave this way with them. But she had started displaying her actual hues ever since she got the ring on her finger. Still, they seemed there because they had a scheme in mind, not too far off. They would be able to bring us into line and increase our respect for our parents. Their idea was a great one, presumably. Na's parents and neither their parents would be willing to pay for our wedding, so we would be left with no other choice except to apologize for our actions and try to be better children to them. We have always had a decent relationship with Nina's parents, hence, I find it strange why they would bring them into any of this. They, you know the word. Oh yes, normal, unlike my folks, who are as crazy as they come. After mine left, Nina's parents phoned us and updated us on what had happened, though I really wanted to be furious with them. The whole event was so strange that we all ended up laughing over it. I'm quite happy that she and her parents did not find an issue in my parents' behavior, since otherwise I may have been in trouble, and once more I would have had to apologize for my parents' activities. My prospective in-laws, however, are really laid back and informed me I had no need to worry about any of it. They did not mind, as they knew that both of my parents were not right and had known them for a long period. The following time my parents came up, they would simply refuse to let them in. Still, I'm happy we could straighten that out without any problems. I simply hope they get the hint and avoid bothering Nina's parents once they don't get any reaction from her. Still, just for good measure, I'm going to unblock them and warn them not to harass anyone else in the family, or I will be compelled to go legal after action, though I'm not sure what I would do. I'm rather confident they will be scared even if I simply lie about it. Therefore, maybe they may back off. Right now, that's the strategy. See whether they attempt something humorous or not. Update 3. Hey, I last blogged over a year ago, and I haven't heard from my brother or parents in practically that long. It has been indeed the best year of my life. 2 months ago, Na and I also got married. Everyone I love was there for the wedding. We had an amazing time, and a few weeks back, we at last came back from our honeymoon. My parents did not wish me well, and neither did Leon. Part of me is happy, since otherwise, I would have had to deal with them. I'm just loving married life right now, and I am looking forward to spending the rest of my life with her. I'm not really bothered about anything as long as she is at my side. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.